Hi guys, welcome back to the Goddess series. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about energy, maintaining energy, especially in the divine feminine, just because I have the divine feminine personality and characteristics. Not tooting my own horn or anything, but I just relate obviously a lot more to divine feminine than masculine. So, because I used to actually be more of the masculine energy in my past, but I'm actually moving more towards the feminine, which actually is in complement with the masculine. So I do have a reading, obviously, with all these cards in my hand. To start off with, just to kind of define the energy of the reading and what we're talking about, it does have a lot to do with divine feminine and divine masculine. So if that energy resonates with you, I definitely would suggest sticking around for the reading. But yeah, if you kind of want to just skip the reading and go on to the actual video, just click a couple minutes ahead. And so anyway, the first card that I pulled was actually the Prince of Pentacles, and I feel like I've had like a little bit more uh, to be honest, a little bit more judgment on this card because I was a little bit misinterpreting the masculine energy, because it felt a little bit more defined as like spiritual wisdom, but I'm actually seeing that a lot more spiritual wisdom with the divine masculine is actually a little bit more on the feminine side, and through understanding that, I've come to the conclusion that there's a little bit more intellectual spirituality with the feminine power, and then more of the physical and material power with the masculine energy. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway, so with the Prince of Pentacles, there's definitely a lot of divine masculine energy. So masculine is in his power, in his element, where he is doing his own thing, complimenting whatever uh, friends, lovers consort to him and seek him out as leadership, because it is the divine masculine's duty and kind of, uh, I guess, not even necessarily duty, but like it's just kind of in their nature to be the leader. And to interpret this a little bit further, sorry about that, it's kind of like wherever the energy is meant for them, they have this kind of like unconscious awareness of all of the things that they create around them. Like when their energy is in the positive, when they're in their element, they are capable of like manifesting, and it's not even in their nature to want to manifest or anything like that. But what I'm basically saying is they are in power, and they create things like basically out of thin air when they're in their element. So, but if ill-tempered, like by others, especially like if there's something that's like wrong with the energy, they are kind of quick to kind of like make bad judgment and be a little bit more into the material, which is not always like bad or anything, but it can make them a little bit reactory. But that's not necessarily like the purpose of the Prince of Pentacles. It's more so of just being able to create and complement energies around them without actually needing to, well, obviously without having to force anything, but also, like, the defensive is, it's in human nature, obviously. So that's kind of why I've actually misinterpreted a little bit in the past, just because I was a little bit confused about that energy and, the purpose. Just because, like, the ego thing, a lot of people have kind of taught me about, like, ego death and stuff, and um, false belief systems, and they don't actually matter. Anyway, though, but with that being said, we do also have the Queen of Wands, which actually I feel like it does kind of represent me in a way, but it's actually just the general reading. I had like this really crazy side note, like this really crazy dream activation last night about like just energy getting turned into like the new earth, and there was like all of these, like, I thought they were tornadoes at first, but it was actually like energy coming down from the sky and just turning the layout, changing the layout of earth. And there was like wildflowers blossoming, and it was just really interesting to kind of interpret like the meaning behind all of that. But with the Queen of Wands, we are definitely in that element of power, but that can also be a little bit too strong with the divine feminine, especially when the divine masculine's involved, because they're energies that are meant to complement each other, and sometimes with the Queen of Wands we can be generous and kind, but if we feel challenged, if our energy isn't right, then we get really defensive and want to kind of attack without actually having any reason to attack, and we question judgment, question integrity, and just question other people, without actually having a cause for that questioning. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind, like maybe kind of holding back a little bit of that defensive attitude, just so you can continue to complement the energies that you're wanting to serve. But definitely, we have this Seven of Wands to kind of close this energy together. And again, Seven of Wands, the seven is always like a divine number for me. It has a lot of meaning for me, just because of like the seven chakras, the seven. Uh, well, I won't get into two. The seven is just a very divine number for me. There's a lot to it. But there's a lot of opposition between these energies, and I believe it's the divine feminine and the divine masculine, just because they're trying to awaken something through this connection. They're separated right now, so they're kind of doing their own thing. There's obstacles, there's difficulties, there's challenges in between this energy. I'm looking at the clock and it's 6:22 right now actually, so that's crazy. But yeah, so like especially like, okay, so maybe like long distance relationships, or just not fully understanding somebody's intentions and just kind of getting to know somebody can cause a lot of confusion, especially if you have like anxiety, social anxiety, or if you just are trying to heal from some trauma wounds. It can be really confusing, this type of energy, because you're anxious, you're trying to interpret a lot of energy and trying to understand a connection, which can actually get in the way of a lot of connections because you're overthinking and trying to either be overqualified or underqualified for the position. So if that makes sense, like you have like this threatening attitude when you're questioning this connection, when you're constantly wondering like why this is going the way it is, why is this happening, that sort of thing. You're supposed to let these type of energies flow together. So it's more like just kind of like a warning, or just like a cautionary reading. So just kind of be aware of that type of energy. You don't want that to influence like your decision making. So like try to interpret that energy, and maybe a little bit of reading up on divine masculine energies, why, if you're a feminine, like why masculine operates the way he does in service of others, because it can be really confusing at first, and you can get this sense of like him kind of pulling away from you in a lot of ways when you don't really understand that sense of leadership within the masculine. And then for the feminine, or I mean for the masculine trying to interpret feminine, I would definitely understand like some of the defensive attitude, and trying to interpret and understand why they are questioning through logic, and instead of like spiritual energy, and why they get defensive and cautionary in these type of connections because of some trauma wounds. So it's not really to kind of like validate somebody's like toxic energy at all. That is not what I'm trying to say, but it's just maybe like getting an interpretation and understanding, because when you do actually interpret and understand those type of energies together and why they operate the way they do, then it becomes a lot easier to have this like stronger communication between the two. So it's just a way to kind of develop and grow the relationship between the divine feminine and divine masculine. So with that aside, we're going to go and continue into the goddess series, goddess vibe series. So this one's a little bit more, I've done some videos on like maintaining a high vibration before. This is actually more, again, it's more for the feminine energy, just because it's something that I obviously talked about resonating with. So although I do have some presence in the masculine energy just from my past and how I had to operate in the past. But now, with that being said, you want to be aware of your own energy around you. And I've said this so many times, like maybe like, having like your crystals constantly charged, being aware, mentally aware of like your responses and your communication with other people, with especially with like friendships, strong bonds, relationships, career. If you're like in a leadership role, like you want to maintain that like leadership aspect, but you also want to be able to put that sort of like coat of armor down when you're going into your personal life, like friendships, relationships. So it's really important to have, and this is why the dynamic can be a lot of confusion with the dynamic of the feminine, is because when we are connected to that leadership, when we're wanting to create and manifest for ourselves, we do have to step up. We do have to kind of take on that leadership role, which is more of a masculine energy. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that women can't lead or anything like that. That's actually the opposite of what I'm saying. Like, they have to put on these shoes, they have to put on this coat of armor when they're trying to essentially grow their own business, grow their own power. Like, they still have to have like think about it as a management role. Like, if you're wanting to manage and run and operate a business, you have to manage people. And managing people is difficult. Like, let's be real, it's difficult to kind of like tell people what to do, to get into that mentality of, hey, I need to tell people what to do, or this is going to go all over the place. It's going to be chaotic and nothing is going to get done. So there's that energy to be aware of, but also like setting strong boundaries and strong communication um, with that type of energy can be a little bit difficult at first if you're stepping into that power. So, like, know that you have to step into that type of armor when you're doing the business, when you're doing and wanting to create something for yourself. So, have like this separation between the energies. So like, know when to take your coat of armor off is basically what I'm saying. When you come home, when you go into your communication, or when you're just like texting somebody like at work, maybe like don't even do that, to be honest. Like, have some nice firm boundaries, and so you're not like kind of mixing the energy and getting distracted really easily at work or with the relationship, because you have to have like strong communication anyway. But that's just, I don't know, side note. But so being aware of your limitations and not overburdening yourself, sorry, and sacrificing who you are for the sake of others, while still allowing yourself to take onto that submissive role. And I know that can be really difficult for the feminine energy to sit into the submissive role and let the masculine take leadership because of trauma wounds, but those are essentially trauma wounds, and I know that that may be triggering for a lot of individuals. Now, hear me out. So, if you're wanting the masculine to step into his power, to take on that leadership role, and to kind of be able to show you his intention, his integrity, and what he's trying to create with you or separately on his own, like, you have to be submissive. You have to take on a higher understanding of that individual and where they are coming from. So allow yourself to put your guard down, although you want to keep boundaries, of course, but allow yourself to take that coat of armor off. And I know it's kind of like, it's kind of confusing with that energy sometimes when you're trying to, interpret like when you should have the coat of armor and when you should take it off. But use your better judgment, obviously, because I mean, if you're watching this video, you're probably pretty aware of like the psychological aspects of relationships and the divine feminine, divine masculine. Maybe not. But the point is to use your better judgment, use your intuition to know exactly when you're supposed to wear that coat of armor and when you're supposed to take it off. Because if you're going to be in that submissive role with a relationship or a friendship even, like, you have to allow yourself to step down, allow yourself to know that you can be wrong. I know, I'm a Virgo, it's okay. You'll be okay, even if you're wrong. But you want to validate that experience not for other people's ego, the sake of other people's ego, or the sake of your ego, but to actually create this integrity aspect, this actual real energy where you're being honest and real and open with yourself and other people. So it has nothing to do with ego. I know it can be interpreted that way, but it's actually a lot more of communication, understanding, and an intellectual perspective, so you can actually digest that type of energy and understand it better. So, and realize and evaluate your own triggers so that you can respond rather than react, and communicate healthy and understand these dynamics a little bit more clearer. So realize that no one shares the same perspective. And I've mentioned this before as well, but like nobody's gonna have the same perspective as you. So you have to understand like when to let your guard down and try to evaluate and understand somebody else's perspective without judging them, gaslighting them, and creating this reality that is simply yours. You have to understand that your experience is your own and that their experiences is their own. So, have this separation between that communication so you can evaluate, communicate, and respond on on an intellectual and a spiritual level. So, going into that, you want to stay aware of your 3D patterns as well. And what I mean by that is addiction, especially in relationships, because we get these attachment to certain energies that are actually, and I was actually reading on this just the other day, and it was actually pretty interesting. Like when you fall in love, you have to understand, like, are you falling in love with the energy that is created? Are you falling in love with an emotion, or are you falling in love with that person and who they are, integrity, spiritually, personally, physically, and all of that sort of thing? Like, are you falling in love with the feeling and the emotion, or are you actually falling in love with the relationship that you share, the energies that you share together, like how you respond to them and what they bring out of you? Like, are they actually complementing your personality and your values, or are you just simply falling in love with the energy of somebody else being present in your life? I know it can be really confusing to try to understand that energy sometimes, but try to really get into depth with this, because you want to get rid of toxic relationships and repeated cycles, because we're trying to get rid of trauma wounds, we're trying to get rid of repeated cycles so we don't have to keep doing the same karmic lessons over and over again. And that also goes into releasing toxic traits such as bad food, unhealthy sleeping schedules, and there's so much more to that. So, eating better, sleeping better, taking care of yourself, and just having firm but releasing boundaries. So, like, you don't want to have like these toxic boundaries where you don't allow anybody in and you don't like share personal things with other people, because that is actually a 3D, excuse me, a 3D toxic wound where you felt like you would have to be defensive in the past, and it was just something that you had to do so other people wouldn't harm you emotionally and sometimes physically. So just understand that that's a trauma wound and you're trying to escape that, and you're trying to create healthy relationships and bonds. So stepping into the goddess vibe, the goddess vibration, keeping and maintaining a higher vibration has a lot more to do with energy, intellectually, and spiritually than just crystals alone. The only reason I really, really love crystals, I love charging them under the moon and things like that, is actually rituals. And this is actually the next thing that I'm really going to talk about and dive deep into is ritual habits, because this is actually what's going to keep you out of the 3D matrix and keep you into a higher vibration where you're manifesting, you're in your power, you're in healthier relationships, you give people their space while allowing them to come into you and attract better things for you. So, like, being in that flow, that water energy, because we're in the age of Aquarius, we want to understand water flow and how things come towards us naturally versus trying to dig and pry and try to interpret every little detail of life and how things function. And it's okay to want to intellectually understand things, but like such as like a birth chart. I was watching a video about astrology and birth charts, personality traits. It's really great to understand those things, but you don't want to over evaluate them. You don't want to over complicate this type of intellectual energy where you're understanding things, because it can trigger this like over overthinking mindscape. So you don't want to overthink things, so be aware of that intellectually, so you can kind of step away from that and just kind of go where the river takes you. With the Aquarius energy, this is like the universe guiding you. It's basically, you want to think of the river and the water flow as the universe's connection, its battery, its magic, and it's pulling you to where you're meant to be. And the things that you want, like the shadow, the ego, or just like spiritual enhancement, spiritual connections, like you want those things to be attracted towards you in order for you to understand their real pure intention and what is actually meant for you. This is the best way to understand it, is allowing things to flow towards you and allowing yourself to go where where the universe is trying to encourage you and push you. And that is through tarot readings. That's just through intuition, intellectual like interpretation, and just like being okay with the present. Like having gratitude is very important, and I know it can be frustrating to get into that gratitude aspect when you're in a lower frequency, in a lower vibration. But having that gratitude when you're in that state, when you're in that lower vibration, it makes you okay with things not going the way you planned, which is so essential for having a higher vibration. Like you have to understand that things are not always going to go the way you plan, and having that expectation in life, things going the way you like think of this as like, I don't know, The Sims. This is just my metaphor because I play The Sims. Like you have like this whole life design, you create this dream house, you create this like career, this great functional like life aspect that you want to design and journal, and you're trying to manifest it. And this goes back to my other video too about like letting things go, and letting, like, in order to manifest higher, you have to like get out of that manifestation energy, which can be confusing at first because it's like, well, I mean, I'm trying to manifest, so I need to get focused on my manifestation, right? No, it's not always like that. Sometimes the universe will actually, it's not even sometimes, the universe is going to guide you into what's meant for you and what's important value wise, and what's going to create a better life here for the collective rather than the individual experience. It's going to be a collective experience, and that's why we're moving on to 5D and New Earth. And so you have to understand that the universe is going to put you in karmic situations on purpose, and it is frustrating. It is frustrating to go through that shadow work. It is frustrating to learn these karmic lessons over and over again, but you're going to have them pounded into you until you finally release, let go, and understand that the universe has your back. So, like, just let go of that fear, let go of that control aspect where you're wanting things to go a certain way, and then things are going to roll out the way they are meant to. You're going to go through these experiences and these learning lessons for a reason, so you can grow intellectually, spiritually, relationships, bonds, those can become developed at a higher frequency, and they are much stronger when you are like this, when you accept things for the way they are. So this is like my biggest point of advice, is if you really want to be okay with your energy, you want to vibrate at a higher frequency, you have to understand that things happen for a reason. So when things don't go the right way, which is your interpretation of right and wrong. I know, it's frustrating, but it'll be okay. So understand that things are not always going to go the way that you plan, and things are going to roll out. You still, of course, have to make some type of like backup plan, and usually that's the universe holding your, back up anyway. Like there's other ways for you to make money out there in the world, in the universe. Like, so just if your career falls, if it collapses, maybe it's trying to get you into your own energy and taking in that leadership and business role that you're meant to have, like a small business, and grow and develop that. Because how are you ever supposed to grow that energy, grow that business, if you're just stuck trying to do a 9 to 5 24/7? Like, you come home and you're tired, and so you don't make any time for that small business, and you don't take, like, maybe you're a power player for sure. Don't get me wrong, maybe you are a power player, but if you really want something to grow, you have to know where your energy is going. And so maybe you're trying to maintain this like, you're trying to bring money in for your house, essentially, because let's talk about inflation. It's real, it's happening. Things are getting beginning to get more expensive, and so it creates this fear element, but that is actually an old fear dynamic. It is a control aspect, and it's through old dynamics, old 3D matrix belief systems and fear systems, that everything has to be a certain way, and we're taught through that, through social dynamics, social life, like school, um, mainstream media. They teach us to interpret these things like, well, I mean, on their end, it's conscious. But they teach us this like unconsciously. So we are learning these things unconsciously through propaganda, through like social values, like social, like credit scores, money, things that don't actually have real value. Excuse me, I think my video ended. I'm not quite sure. But real value, real gratitude comes from understanding the universe and how nature works with us, through us, and for us. And so getting rid of that old fear dynamic, like, okay, I love you, but like veganism is not the answer. And no, that's gonna be a little harsh for some people, but like, there's this dynamic where we were created to digest food, maybe not as on the level that we do here, especially in America. Like, we eat way too much red meat, we eat way too much protein, and we don't have like enough vegetables, we don't have enough fruit. And so it creates this like, this lazy attitude and this lazy body, because we're constantly feeding ourselves like things that are not good for our health, and also keep us in a bad mental health, because a lot of these things have like dopamine triggers, like a lot of them are filled with like sugars, chemicals, drugs. A lot of the food that we consume actually has drugs in it that actually trigger and like thwart our own minds, and that's something to really kind of get into. I'm not a health expert by any means, so you're maybe going to want to reach out and do your own research for that sort of thing. But there's a lot of things that we consume that are not good for our energy and intellectual and our body, our mindscapes, like all of that. It's just not great, not good in any way. So it's understanding that your health, your mental health, your physical health, what you do, you consume, eat food, like all of these things have a lot of impact on your energy. And if you're wanting to maintain a higher frequency, you have to feed yourself better. And I know I already explained this, but you have to really be in that understanding that you have to make some disciplines for yourself. If you want to change and you want to grow, you have to challenge yourself first of all. Like, I mean, that's what you did in school. And yeah, I'm not necessarily talking crap about school, but like, yeah, a lot of the social dynamics weren't in our best interest. However, when you challenge yourself, you get this natural dopamine in your brain anyway, which is just something to understand and think about intellectually and try to interpret that in its benefit and its value. So, like, when you're challenging yourself, you understand that you are a part of that growing dynamic, and it gives you this sense of gratitude and self respect and self ego, where you know that you are capable of better and greater things. And when you challenge yourself, like me, I was a nerd in school. I loved challenging myself. I went and I started college early. I started college when I was in high school, and I was always wanting to get like that 4.0 grade average. It wasn't always that great. It was like 3.8 or 3.9 or something like that. I know. But aside the point is I was always constantly challenging myself, and so I always kind of strayed away from like the social dynamic. Yeah, I did have my, time where I was like in some toxic friendships, toxic relationships in the past, and I went through a lot of challenges through that at a younger age, but I was also really in my growing stage and my intellectual stage where I was really focused on schoolwork. I always wanted to challenge myself. And I did that with video games as well. I know I'm a nerd, but like I was always trying to get ahead of myself, or not get ahead of myself. I was trying to get better, and that is through repetition, it's through rituals, it's through cycles, positive cycles that you create for yourself. And now I know that I tell you like let the universe guide you, but the universe isn't just going to like guide you in everything, every aspect of your life. You are an individual. The universe is here to help, right? So, yeah, you're a part of the universe. Yeah, you're a part of Source, but you are also still an individual. So, you still want to create these rituals, these habits, and you want them to complement your personality, and you want them to complement, but also challenge your personality. But you want them to complement what you're trying to create for yourself, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So, when you're wanting to manifest a certain lifestyle, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying that you should change some core values, change some rituals, and kind of create them around what you're wanting to manifest for yourself. So, yeah, so being in a higher frequency, being in a higher energy, it has a lot to do with manifesting, but it also creates this sort of escape. It, I mean, it is. It's the escape from 5D, from 3D, not 5D. Sorry, we're moving on to 5D. It creates this escape of the 3D matrix and all of these situations, all of these elements of life that don't actually have any core value, and a lot of that is through materialism. Celebrities and this misinterpreted lifestyle of like, yeah, you have to have more to have more value in life. You have to have more friendships, more relationships in order to create a better life for yourself. Like you have to be popular, or you have to have a lot in order to have a functioning and abundant life for yourself. That is not abundance. First of all, having like health, good mental health more than anything is like those two things, good physical, good mental health, like those two things are essentially going to be the only thing that actually matters. Yeah, you should have your vices. Yeah, you should do shadow love. You should love your shadow and do things that, create a sense of dopamine in your brain, like do things like every once in a while, or but you still want to have boundaries and disciplines for yourself still, because that is going to have a much better sense of gratitude towards what you do. Like you won't lose that sense of creativity when you have this maintained balance of prioritizing mental and physical health, and knowing that if you are like getting into like the social influencer stage, you're wanting to be a social influencer, a social media influencer, you're wanting to be a musician, an artist, you wanting to essentially have a lot of followers, want to necessarily become famous. I hope that's not really like your goal and aim in life, which it is okay. It's one of those shadow things, but like you have to understand why you're wanting those things and why you're wanting to create a better life. So you are setting the intention to lead and guide others. This is like the best way, but like also be very open-minded about that sort of leadership role, because you are not right about everything. I know, neither am I. But like understanding that, if you're wanting to create that sort of lifestyle, it is okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do these things. I'm just saying like understand what your intention behind that is. When you have a better intention, and the universe is going to understand that intention for you, and you're going to be able to help guide others into themselves versus creating this cult like mentality that you're right about everything, because there's a lot of the spiritual community, and this is me dashing on the spiritual community. I love y'all, but some of y'all are crazy. Some of y'all have this like crazy dynamic of life, and you like gang up on other people and their points of view and their perspectives of life, and you want to force feed this like sense of like how life should be to a bunch of people, and you want to pound and drill this into them and then like laugh and like mock them if they don't see the things that you see. And that's like the opposite of what spirituality is. Spirituality is about having an open-mindedness, as especially for the collective landscape, and knowing that, you know, people go through different experiences for a reason. Like there's other people who are like asleep for a reason, and it has nothing to do with them being lower or lesser than you, so get over yourself. But yeah, there is this sense of balance and being able to teach people about themselves and grow them in their power. That is like the main aspect of spirituality, is allowing other people to grow into themselves. That is like the core, that I personally believe that should be the core functionality of spirituality. That's just me. But yeah, so I hope this video at least gets you in the right state of mind and allows you to interpret these energies and their connection, especially with the divine feminine and divine masculine. I'm going to do a little bit more research on divine masculine just because I personally am still growing. I want to learn a little bit more of the masculine, divine masculine dynamic. I was reading a little bit more today about divine masculine and the leadership aspect, and just trying to allow, when you allow the masculine to lead, when you allow them to, you know, help guide you in your life, they will stick around you because they feel this sense of value. This is like the only thing I was able to interpret today. So just, you know, understand I'm not an expert. But like when you understand these dynamics and how they complement each other, then you can understand people, situations, karmic situations more than anything. You can understand why these things happen for the reasons they do, and you can understand and let go of a lot of these pressures. Because spirituality, let's be real, it creates a lot of pressure aside from all the social pressure. Like you have all of these different aspects of spirituality that you're supposed to learn, like through astrology, you know, birth charts, uh, the laws of one Ra. I could just keep going. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot to learn. So, like, allow yourself a little bit of freedom to not know everything, and then you will vibrate at a higher frequency. But also challenge yourself to learn these things and figure out something specific that works for you. Because when you focus that energy on that specific thing, one, you have like a niche, and two, like you just get better at it. Like anything in school, like when you continue to get better at something, Earth is a school, by the way. When you continue to focus that energy on one thing, and I know this is going back, I'm going back on my word, I love you, but like when you focus your energy on one thing and you learn and grow through that, then you become better at it, and you can challenge yourself more and then kind of move on to the next thing when you finally get tired of that, I guess. But like it helps you grow, and it helps you become not necessarily an expert, but you can help others, help yourself. I hope that makes sense. So if you want abundance and you want to create a life through spirituality and you want to help others grow into themselves, challenge yourself and teach what you preach, basically. So I hope that helps you understand the dynamic a little bit better. We are going to get into more focus and detail in the next video. I'm going to try to do these goddess rituals, witchcraft videos on every Wednesday. Don't quote me on that, although you should. In the comments down below, quote me, go ahead. Because I will get more consistent with that type of energy, and allow you to have more content to do your own research and validation, evaluation, that's the word I was thinking. Please don't validate me. Uh, but evaluate these type of energies better and understand them so you can grow. Yep. Okay. Love you guys. Bye.